And let's move to the next part, which is you have seen all of these organizations which has matured over period of time, and you have seen across various breadth of the industry. So what had been some of the key things which you noticed as the common success factors as well as common mistakes? So some of the common success factors and failure factors when it comes to implementing continuous security validation.
Yeah, very good point. And I'll kind of preface this by saying the answer is unique to every single organization. So it heavily depends on the nature of the business, the culture, unfortunately budgets, and having that strategic alignment between the overall organization's financial goals and their security goals. And as part of that, ultimately you want to have you want to prevent attacks from happening in the first place. And there are metrics and key metrics that you can identify where you're able to reduce those attempts in the first place. So the equivalent of this would be like, let's just say at 2 o'clock in the morning, you hear someone knocking on your door, between the hours of 2 and 3 a.m. And although they're not getting in, that's the equivalent of reconnaissance, and they're basically trying to probe and identify areas that you're in, and those might be something as simple as firewall deny logs that might be of interest, and then so on and so forth. So anything you can do to identify those areas and eliminate them or reduce them is a key metric that you want to have. The other thing is, like, in the event that you actually have an incident, you want to reduce or that you have a breach or someone's in your organization. The number one thing is to detect them as soon as possible, and overall reducing what's called the dwell time and the amount of time that attacker is in your house effectively. And you want to basically investigate it as quickly as possible. You want to eradicate it as quickly as possible, and you want to address what the core entry point was in the first place, and then basically patch it up, fix it so it doesn't happen again. And those are key fundamentals that are there. And that's where the biggest challenge is like organizations just don't have they don't have the visibility that they require to get to those points. Those are certainly very key. The other kind of key point that organizations will get into is a lot of the monitoring and doing these different assessments is ultimately they're trying to find a needle in a haystack is a common analogy that's used. And unfortunately, what organizations will do, especially early on, is they'll add more and more hay with the idea that they will have better visibility. And unfortunately, that actually makes things more difficult, because it's more difficult to actually find the needle. So as a key metric and focus and priority area, it's definitely best practice to eliminate the noise and eliminate all that excess hay, so you can find these needles faster and quicker, and eventually get to the point where you're actually able to categorize the individual needles, so you can actually identify a needle within a stack of needles that's relevant to the specific use case that you have. Because what will happen with advanced persistent threats is they'll actually come back time and time again. And unfortunately, one of the key things that ends up happening is, especially with ransomware attacks, is organizations they'll actually recover and implement a backup, or basically get to a steady state, but they won't address the main entry point that the attackers use to get in. So all they do is they come right back in, and that's why paying for ransomware doesn't really work, because a lot of times organizations don't address the core entry point. And once kind of the word gets out, then it's open season. So you might have multiple different criminal organizations looking to get into your environment. And there's metrics that you can build around all of those things, like reducing false positives, reducing false negatives, and then and overall measuring it is